So important presentation is mediation activities and strategies in intercultural virtual exchange settings, and the topic is related to the work I've been doing for quite a few years, which involves the virtual exchange settings and exploring the intercultural exchange settings from different perspectives, from both linguistic and intercultural gains. And the new concept which I have been exploring recently is the concept of mediation, and I'm going to talk about that today.
Barbara, dankas nin por intereso por sia temo. Si dum multe da jaroj esploris pri interkulturaj interŝanĝo virtuala, kaj lastatempe si specife fokusiĝis pri peraj agadoj ĉi-rilate.
So a few words about virtual exchange. It is also in the literature referred as telecollaboration, or especially in the US, it would be related to the concept of collaborative online international learning, COIL. But recently the term virtual exchange has become maybe more popular, and the definition is the definition of virtual exchange would be connecting cohorts of students, usually students of universities who study at geographically distant institutions, connecting them through structured online interaction, through structured activities, under the supervision of the teachers. And the benefit would obviously relate to the fact that virtual exchange is a very cost-effective alternative to study abroad, but at the same time it allows to experience some of the learning benefits associated with study abroad.
Virtuala interŝanĝo ankaŭ malproksima kunlaboro, telekunlaboro, ĝi kunmetas grupojn de studentoj en geografiaj malproksimaj lokoj kaj institutoj, kun interago strukturita kaj sub la kontrolado de instruisto. Kaj la granda avantaĝo kompreneble estas, ke ĝi estas multe pli malmultekosta ol studi eksterlande, sed ĝi tenas multajn avantaĝojn.
And the studies carried out to explore the learning benefits of virtual exchange would obviously signal the benefits of the participants related to the increased language proficiency and intercultural communicative competence gains. That would be the major gains related to the learning outcomes of virtual exchange programs.
Yes, do estas du grandaj avantaĝoj de tio, du grandaj gajnoj. Unu estas, ke la lingvo kapablo iĝas pli alta, kaj ankaŭ oni akiras interkulturan komunikan kompetenton.
And what though we want to explore more is to have a look at how the communication occurs in the virtual exchange settings, and because obviously there are lots of challenges we as teachers can identify in the classrooms, and the concept of mediation comes to our mind because it captures the bridging work that, for example, concepts such as constructs such as intercultural communicative competence does not actually fully explain, and mediation is very much observable in the interaction between the participants. So this is the focus of the study.
Do tiuj ĉi grupoj, klasĉambroj interrete estas pli kaj pli kulture kaj lingve malsamaj, kaj estas tre grave por la instruisto administri peri tiu. Ne aŭdas min? Oh, do mi devas paroli pli laŭte. Sed vi aŭdas ŝin, ĉu ne?
Yes, yes, ni aŭdas vin ankaŭ.
Bon, vi aŭdas min, sed oni ne aŭdas min. Pardonu se mi devus paroli tre laŭte, sed alimaniere ni ne aŭdas min ĉi tie. Lastatempe la klasĉambroj estas lingve kaj kulture pli kaj pli malsamaj, kaj instruistoj devas ne nur instrui en havojn, sed ankaŭ peri tiun, administri tiun malsamecon. Do tiu ĉi koncepto de perado iĝis tre grava, kaj tio estas afero kiu antaŭaj studoj pri interkultura kompetento ne vere kaptis plene, sed nun iĝis tre grava.
Thank you. So the concept of mediation, I have based on my definition on the European Central European framework of Common European framework of references for languages, which was published by Council of Europe in the newest edition, and the mediation has been named as the fourth mode of communication, along with reception, production, and interaction. And language user, through this in this concept, is repositioned as a mediator who facilitates communication and meaning making between parties who cannot access the text, the concept themselves directly. So the very interesting list of descriptors, the categories, the major three categories of mediation would be, according to Common European Framework of References, mediating a text, mediating concepts, and mediating communication.
Do ni konas foro, ni konas tion kiel KER en Esperanto. Nuntempe estas la KER-ekzamenoj, ĉu ne? Do tiu estas la Komuna Europea Referencadro nella versio de 2001. Ĝi substrekas peradon, kaj denove en 2012 eĉ pli, nomas ĝin la kvaran manieron komuniki, kune kun receptado, produktado kaj interago. Kaj la uzanto de lingvo iĝas Esperanto, kiu faciligas komunikadon kaj sensoplenan komunikadon ene de grupoj kiuj ne komprenas unu la alian. Kaj la KER-kadro distingas inter peradi tekston, peradi konceptojn kaj peradi komunikadon.
And these are the definitions, or maybe giving more details to what is meant by mediating a text. So that would mean relaying, processing, translating information. Mediating concepts would be collaborating or co-constructing on a shared understanding of a concept. And mediating communication would be acting as a mediator when communication flow breaks down, trying to establish a common ground or mediate the difference.
Do, peradi tekston povas esti ekzemple traduki, peradi konceptojn povas esti kunlabori por konstrui novan komunan signifon, kaj peradi komunikadon estas peri kiam da komunika interŝanĝo rompiĝas.
And apart from the three categories of mediation specified in the Common European Framework of References for Languages. There is also a list of strategies which overlap or occur in all those along all those three main categories, and these strategies would be, for example, linking to previous knowledge, breaking down complicated information into smaller, simpler units, adapting language, for example, simplifying it, or establishing a shared understanding. Also, the ability to notice when the communication is breaking down, being able to diagnose why and intervene in order to prevent the communication breakdown. And one of these mediation strategies would also involve asymmetries of expertise, in which the content authority is not doesn't or coincides with the linguistic authority, so linguistic proficiency, for example. In other words, it means that direction of mediation does not depend on the linguistic proficiency. It changes, it may depend on the content authority.
Do tio estas resumo de kelkaj peradaj strategioj. Ekzemple, oni povas kunligi kun konojn kiujn oni jam havas. Oni povas dispecigi tro komplikajn informojn kaj klopodi konstrui comunan comprenon, kai compreni kiam comunicado rompigas, kai compreni kiel kai kiel oni povas positive tion klopodi solvi, kai ankaŭ oni devas compreni ke estas povas esti speciala konoj pri enhavo, kiu estas tamen povas kuneksisti kun manko de simetrio lingva. Do ne temas nur pri lingvo, oni devas ankaŭ kompreni pri enhavaj aferoj.
And I wanted to apply the concept of mediation and to the interaction data that I have collected from virtual exchange project. So that's why my research question would be what kinds of mediation activities, mediating text, mediating concepts, mediating communication, occur in virtual exchange interactions.
So, esplora demanda, estas vidi kiuj el tiuj agadoj okazas en virtuala interago.
And the project lasted for 6 weeks. There were pre-service teachers of English as a second language who are enrolled at one public university in Poland and one public university in the United States. They were collaborating in groups of 3 or 4 teachers. 2 representatives of a Polish university, paired with 2 representatives of American university on average. They had to discuss the Sustainable Development Goals as defined by UNESCO. They were given by the teachers, they were given specific questions and specific documents that they had to read in advance and then discuss these documents during their online meeting. There were 6 meetings, and we have selected 6 Sustainable Development Goals, and obviously we selected just 6 out of the 17s because it was impossible to select all of them.
Do tiu ĉi projekto estis tiu ĉi projekto daŭris 6 monatoj, kai gi rilatis al decoc instruistoi, kiui ancora un eigis plena instruistoi de universitato en Polando, kai universitato en Usono, kai ili focusigis en la celoi por daŭripova evoluigo de UNESCO. Do antau la ciu el tiu rencontigio estis ses el tiu rencontigioi, antau el tiui ili la instruisto ricevis tiu in legagioi pri la celoi, kai do tio post estos temo pri discuto.
And the data analysis basically involved analyzing the transcripts, because the meetings were recorded and later they were transcribed with the use of NVivo transcription module. So I basically worked using the transcripts, and first the transcripts were coded deductively. We were looking for the three common European framework of references for languages mediation categories, such as mediating a text, mediating concepts, mediating communication. So we applied this initial coding framework using the descriptor scales, and then within each category we were also looking for the inductively for the specific mediation strategies.
Do, por tiu ci studo estis usata la transcribo, char ciu estis registrita kai oni usis la transcribon, kai oni usin tiun pera in categorio in de care, do per i texton, per i concepto, per i comunicado, usante la prescribo in de care. Sed poste oni ancau ene de ciu categorio clopodis trovi la strategio in kiu estis usatai.
And this is the example of this is how the coding looked like when it comes to the three deductive codes: mediating concept, text, concepts, and mediating communication. And we had the definition based on common European framework of references categories. And then there are the examples of the codes for the particular strategies and the definitions related to them. Maybe I will not go through them, but just move on to the results.
Yes. Do, tio estas nur la definoi kai strategioi. Do, sed ni ne legos tion, ni iros alla venonta.
And this was an exploratory study, so as I said, the idea was to apply the concept of mediation and verify how well it captures or the discourse of virtual exchange, and maybe captures the gains related to communication. That's why I was looking for the examples of the different categories or different strategies that the participants implemented. And for example, when there was a lot of mediating text examples. In case of this project, the students would be, for example, referring to the policy documents from their own national education system. So they would be summarizing the content and referring to the content that they found in their own national education systems, for example, which would be obviously inaccessible to the partners from a different country. So this strategy, this activity was very much present in the discourse, in the transcripts.
So uno el aferoj kiu videblas multe en la transkriboj estas ekzemple polaj instruistoj kiuj vidis ŝtatajn dokumentoj pri edukado en Pollando, kaj tio estis malfacile komprenebla de la alia flanko.
And the mediating of concepts was the activity was also identified in the transcripts. There was actually very frequent occurrence of this activity being performed by the participants. So sharing understanding of concepts that would kind of alternate between the participants. This obviously would be an example of explaining how Polish early English education system in Poland works, and it would be something which the concept that was new to the American interlocutors.
Do, ĉar estis tiuj du malsamaj sistemoj, do la poloj, kiu volis paroli pri la sistemo de frua angla lingva edukado al siaj usonaj kolegoj, devis multe labori por fari tio, por komprenigi tion.
And then this last category, mediating communication, the strategies which were identified. Of course, this mediating communication activity was also identified in the transcripts. This particular category would be exemplified by the strategies where there was a lot of work done to acknowledge both perspectives. So the students would basically kind of agree that, well, this is how the situation looks like in the States, for example, or this is how you see it. But there was a lot of kind of redirecting of the conversation towards common ground rather than allowing to stick or to kind of be entrenched in their own views, or in the students' own views. So the mediating communication also happens, and it was very, very interesting process when it comes to the strategies employed.
Tiu pera comunicado ni vidis exemple en la facto che kelkaj konceptoj kiu estis tro unu flankaj estis vidataj de ambaŭ flankoj fine, do oni laboris por vidi aferojn de ambaŭ flankoj, en tiu konsistis la perada aspekto. Do ne estis malakceptado, sed perado.
And so to conclude, the main findings would be the following: that this concept of mediation is very much applicable to the discourse, to the interaction that occurs in the virtual exchange when we have representatives of different languages, different cultures interacting with each other, which naturally or traditionally in virtual exchange there has been always the asymmetry of linguistic position, because we had like pairing or native speakers with non-native speakers, and this asymmetry when it comes to the language was looked different when we applied the concept of mediation, because it shows that there is a lot of asymmetry, but it changes from linguistic to content. So if the non-native speakers or the Polish participants were explaining their own concepts, their own cultural specifics, they would basically deconstruct the linguistic asymmetry at the same time. So from that perspective, the concept of mediation turns out to be very applicable to exploring and analyzing the script.
Tiu pera concepto estis ankaŭ tre grava la momento in kiu estis compreneble homoj kiu estis denaskaj de iu lingvo, parolis denaske iu lingvo, kaj homoj kiu ne parolis denaske iu lingvo. Do tiu perada concepto vere helpis ankaŭ malkonstrui tiun superiorecon de la parolantoj de la homoj kiu povis paroli sian denaskan lingvon, ekzemple in tiu ĉi caso la angla, ĉu ne, por usonanoj. Bone.
And so the main findings, also obviously, as I've mentioned already, they would show that those three main mediation activities have been identified in the transcript. Mediating a text was the activity that required not only translation but also cultural contextualization, and a lot of these extra information was added to the extra information was added in the discussions. So mediating a text would be the activity that was identified, and with the this strategy of amplifying or the information, adding cultural contextualization. Then we had mediating concepts, which turned out to be the most frequent mediation category, and this clarifications, asking questions, adjusting explanation happened very, very frequently. These strategies were very, very frequent. And then we had also occasionally less frequent mediating communication when there was some disagreement over the very sensitive issues such as immigration or religion or gender roles, and some participants took explicit mediator roles. They would acknowledge both views, and that would be the main strategy applied in such a category. And finally, the important finding, the bottom line would be that mediation recipient roles, they were shifted by the topic, so they were not fixed by nationality, the culture, the language proficiency. It was a very, very dynamic process, and basically mediation turns out and was well exemplified in the discourse of virtual exchange as a multi-dimensional, very dynamic, and definitely non-one directional process.
Por in terminoj de Peradi tekston, oni devis doni multe pli da kulturaj kuntekstaj konoj, kaj in termino de Peradi konceptoj, kiu estis la plej ofta afero, oni devis fari demandojn, klarigi, doni klarigojn. En terminoj de Peradi komunikadon ofte estis homoj ne konsentis pri aferoj kiel emigrado, religio, genraj roloj, kaj unu el la gravaj strategioj estis rekoni ambaŭ poziciojn, rekoni ambaŭ vidojn, kaj el tie labori por trovi komunan terenon por ambaŭ. Interesa afero estis ke tiu la perada rolo, che è la rolo della homoi, estis ŝanĝata pli fare de la temo, do emigrado aŭ religio kutopo, ol fare de nacieco aŭ lingvo, aŭ lingvo kapablo. Do tiu ĉi perada afero devas esti tre dinamika kaj multimensia. Ne unu directa.
And that's it. Thank you very much. I'm very would be happy to answer any questions if there is time. I don't know.
Koran dankon. Ĉu estas demandoj? Mi faras aplaŭdon, unue mi diru. Yes. Kaj ĉu estas demandoj? If nobody has a question, no question. I have one. So you said that the topics were more important than countries in
yes. The language. Yes.
Can you language use? Can you give an example or a couple of examples about that?
There were obviously the Sustainable Development Goals of the SDGs that were formulated by UNESCO. So when the topic was, for example, education, the question was how education system looks like in your country. So how climate change is addressed in your country. So the students would have to come with their own country's information, and that would lead to asking follow-up questions. And so obviously the linguistic let's say differences didn't matter at that stage.
The content was more important.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Mi demandis exemplon de tiu ci facto che do la temo estis pli grava o la cono de lingvo, kai si donis exemplo de la facto che tiu ci laboro estis pri la celoi de dauripove evoluigo de UNESCO, kai estas temoi kiel exemple educado, do che estas educado in via lando, au kiun vi pensas pri ecologia e temoi, ĉu ne? Kai pri tio pli gravis la enhavon vere, pli ol la lingvo kapablo por fine trovi solvon por ĉiuj. Bone. Ĉu estas aliaj demandoj?
Alessandra, mi havas demandon.
Oh, do estas.
Unue Giri, bonvole Giri.
Ne, post vi, Amat, bonvolu.
Ancora. Jes, mi volas tion diri, ke esperantistoj vi scias ke faris eĉ libron pri tiuj daŭripovaj celoj de UNO kaj UNESCO. Kaj ili montris ke por ĉiuj tiuj celoj lingvaj baroj ĉiam estas malhelpaj. Do tio kion ŝi diris, ĉu kontravas tion?
Esperanto speaking people made studies or wrote books about the goals of sustainable development of UNESCO, and they try to show that for each one of these goals, actually the language barriers are very important, are a very important factor. So do you agree with that in terms of your study or not?
My study was based on a project that involved student teachers, so future teachers, and the concept of sustainable development goals was introduced to these teachers, so they didn't have much knowledge about the sustainable the SDGs before. So in my project the students were discussing how these concepts, how these goals differ, how their realization differs. So they were using English, obviously, because that was the language of communication. I think from this perspective of my study, because we had a little bit of linguistic kind of difference between the American students, Polish students. Polish students obviously felt a little bit, they had the speaking anxiety that they're speaking to the native speakers. So when they were allowed to talk about their own country, how or express their own opinion, which I think it liberated them from the linguistic anxiety. So from that perspective, my answer to your question would be that in this particular frame, this particular interaction, I think language didn't matter. I mean, they would it actually allowed to express the ideas with a more confident way. That would be my observation. But I obviously understand that in different contexts this would be a huge difference. This would be a huge difference.
La rispondo all'Ahmad. Ahmad is our president. Ahmad Reza Mamdouh is the president of our association, by the way. La rispondo al nia presidente, Ahmad Reza Mamdouh, estis che en aliaj kontekstoj certe tiu lingvo diverseco estos grava problemo, sed en konteksto de tiu ĉi studo estis tre speciala, ĉar temis pri estontaj instruistoj kaj ili ne tiel bone konis ancora la celo di daŭripove evoluigo kaj estis inkondukataj al ili por tiu ĉi studo, kaj fakte kiam estis diskutoj kaj la poloj kompreneble havis iom da timo esprimi siajn aferojn en la angla, ĉar ili ne estis denaskaj, sed kiam ili povis paroli pri polaj aferoj, do en tiu ĉi kazo ili sentis sin enpovigitaj, ke eĉ uzante la angla ili sentis ke ili bone konis la aferon, havis siajn ideojn, do ili estis kapablaj diri ilin sufiĉe forte, do de tiu ĉi vidpunkto la lingva baro ne estis tiel forta.
Dankon.
Bone, ĉu Giri?
Se mi rajtas.
Yes.
So let me do what I did earlier, namely ask in English and then translate my question into Esperanto. Mi unue metos mian demandon en la angla, kaj poste esperantigos ĝin. The two groups were culturally similar, had similar cultural capital. Both were pre-service teachers. In many contexts in India, for example, very often the cultural capital of the two groups interacting is very different. You have an urban English speaking group and a rural non-English speaking group. So very often the communication gap between the two is of a different order of cultural self-confidence. I was wondering what kinds of mediation strategies would have to be in place in such a context. Do mia demando estes que en tiu ĉi studo la du grupoj estas pli malpli simile, havas la similan kulturan kapitalon. Ili ambaŭ estis instruistoj, estontaj instruistoj. En Barato ofte okazas ke la du grupoj estas vaste malsamaj. Estas urba grupo de angla parolantoj kaj kampara grupo de ne angla parolantoj. Do en tiu situacio mia demando estis kiaj peradaj strategioj estus taŭgaj. Dankon.
So in the in the mode of mediation as one of the communication aspects, the communication happens with within the similar linguistic code. So these categories, these strategies would refer to two interlocutors communicating using the same linguistic code. So if you are talking about one group not using English, the other group using English, then the main direction of communicating, I think, would be trying to establish, obviously using the same linguistic code, if you want. So would that mean that if the urban speaking English participants speak the language of the rural participants, then I would imagine it's kind of a obvious adapting of an obvious language code, which would be the language of the rural participants to communicate. Obviously, gradually, maybe in the process, if there is time and there is opportunity, the translanguaging could happen. But the first step obviously would be to reach out towards the party or the interlocutor you want to communicate with and adapting to the language.
Ĉu vi... bone. Yes. Do la demando de Giri estis pri tiuj tre malsamaj grupoj, kiel ekzemple en Barato povus esti en urbo tre bone angle parolanta kaj en kamparo ne parolante la anglan. Do kiel fari en tiu caso? La respondo de Barbara estis do en tiu caso oni devus unue trovi manieron comune paroli, cioè ne do in tiu ci caso exemple se la homoi de camparo ne conas la anglan, sed la homoi de la urbo povas kiela in paroli la lingvo de la camparano, do in tiu ci caso oni comenzos de la lingvo de la camparano, che poste oni trovos alie maniero, sed oni devas comenzi de trovi ponton kiu vere existas, cioè ne? Yes. Bone, ĉu estas aliaj demandoj? Se ne, ni ankoraŭ foje dankas Barbara.
Thank you very much.
Thanks again.